Anthony Perera, you are the Chief Growth Officer and founder at AirPros USA. Welcome to Toolbox for the Trades.
Thank you for having me, Jackie. I appreciate being here.
I'm so excited to talk to you. You've got a pretty interesting story. We're going to talk about how you went from being a technician to a technology entrepreneur. You are also the founder of inspected.com and the Permit Hub, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But before we get there, we need to start at the beginning. But even before we get to the beginning, I need to ask you an icebreaker, which is the new way that I'm starting these podcasts. And I would love to know, since you're such a busy man, if you had to delete all but 3 apps from your smartphone, which ones would you keep?
Probably ServiceTitan because I'm on this podcast.
I kind of queued it up for you. I queued it up for you. You didn't have to go there. You didn't have to go there, but you did, and I respect you for it.
ServiceTitan, inspected, and probably I don't know if email and text are kind of part of the Apple universe, but probably one of those two.
Okay, if you could only email or text for the rest of your life, what would you prefer?
Probably text because it's instant.
Yeah.
I think you get better communication and responses. You can get more done quickly. Email's great, but if you look at my phone right now, I mean, it honestly would have, and I can probably show it to you, over 110,000 unread emails, and it's not by design. It's just they kind of start piling up after a while, and it becomes kind of a daunting task.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you on that. I think my email right now has something like 1,200. I am impressed with 100,000 though. I haven't seen that. But we're not here to talk about email and task management. We are here to talk about your journey in the trades, and I want to know how it began. How did you get into the trades, Anthony?
Yeah, so my father's been doing HVAC for as long as I can remember. When I was a kid, he'd take me around with him on in his truck, and in a previous business I had, we were in the bar and restaurant industry, and my
Uh,
dad was my construction manager. So he'd go and he'd manage the contractors, do the build outs, organize permits and all that good stuff. And when I'd exited that business, truthfully, he came up with the idea of getting in an HVAC company, and my goal really was to just kind of get him off my payroll at the time, right? So we started Air Pros in 2017, one tech, one truck. And, I used that cliche term out of the garage of our house because it really was out of my garage. And that was how Air Pros was formed. It was because my father wanted to open his own business. He never owned an actual air conditioning company. And I said I'd handle marketing and organization and setting up the business. And that was, what is it now? 6 years as of this June.
that's amazing. And when we first spoke, you mentioned that it was one truck, one tech 2017, and now you're up to 40 million in AR, and you have almost 1,000 techs, I believe.
So we actually will do 225 million this year in revenue. We have over 1,000 employees and just over 750 trucks in the organization.
All right. So I also have a history in the bar restaurant industry. What a like split, right? Like, well, tell me, what were you doing in bar restaurant industry before that?
So I think you should go back to the very beginning of my kind of entrepreneur journey. Started when I was 19. I actually was going to school for pre-law, knowing how much I've spent on lawyers now, versus versus me getting my law degree could have saved me a couple $1,000,000. I think over the course of my career so far. But
Yeah, but then you'd have
transparently,
to be a but then you'd have to be a lawyer. No offense to any
100%.
lawyers listening. My brother-in-law is a lawyer, so I respect you. I'm so happy that you do what you do, so I don't have to do it. That's what I love to say.
Exactly right. And I have some
Okay,
great friends
sorry.
who are lawyers, who are awesome at their job. But I'm happy I didn't go down that path. I had a passion for racing mud trucks. Funny enough, so growing up in Central Florida in the Ocala area, mud truck racing and Mud Fest and all these events were kind of taking off circa 2006 and seven, and I was still in college. And I went to a store one day to buy a magazine. Had a Jeep, a CJ7 that we'd go out and race on the weekends, and I wanted to buy a magazine to help make my truck faster. At the time, there really wasn't any magazine dedicated to our sport. Right? You can go to the store and you'd buy a magazine for, I don't know, four wheeling or JP or whatever it was, or diesel power back then. And so I said, listen, how hard can it be? I was halfway decent in high school at writing and had a few cameras laying around. And so we started Mud Life back in 2007. It was a magazine dedicated to kind of the off-road sector, like lifestyle. I had $10,000 that my grandfather had given me for college. And, he told me not to use it for anything else but college, but we ended up using it to start the magazine. And, printed it first copy. We had 0 subscribers, 0 advertising clients. It was literally a picture book with photos, and we'd walk around these events and hawk it like a hot dog vendor for $3 a copy. So took that, grew it, realized the importance. When you're building a business, it's not just building the business, it's building the brand behind the business. And so with that, we hit the road and went to events and started printing T-shirts. And, by our 3rd issue, we were in 19,000 stores across the country. Books A Million, Barnes and Nobles, Borders, all that fun stuff. It's kind of my real first jaunt into the business world. And, I kind of, had a lot of fun doing it. Eventually I sold the business to a big publishing firm when I was like 21, going on 22 years old. Had to drop out of college, obviously, at this point, and was really focused on, becoming the chief editor for that magazine. Realized I was way too immature for that at that point in my career. Worked for them for about 6 months. And at 22, what else would be the cool thing to do at 22 years old and own a bar restaurant in your hometown?
Yeah.
So I decided to launch a country western theme concept at 22, going on 23, and it was hugely successful. Exited it a few years later. Took about a year off, did some real estate, and got the itch to go back into the bar restaurant sector. So I brought my father in the business to help kind of do the construction build outs. We opened 6 locations across 4 different states. And then I sold that business in 2016. A year later, we started AirPros.
Okay, I didn't know any of that, but what I wrote down 2 things while you were talking. First, you're not just building the business, you're building the brand behind the business. I mean, that's just a quote. You just said a quote right there. You just said like a tagline for the book that I imagine you're planning to write at some point. Also, you strike me as someone who, when you find a problem, you solve for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of been, listen, first of all, it's a passion of mine. I'm a creative guy by nature, and my creativity comes from building companies. But, kind of hitting on the brand perspective, it really hit me pretty hard in the magazine industry, because how do you set yourself apart from other magazines that are 40, 50, 60 years old in an already kind of crowded sector? And so, when we started publishing the magazine, our goal was we wanted to have our readers who actually go to the store, pick up a carton of oil, whatever they were doing for their truck, and grab a Mud Life, right? That was the brand we created. And back then, this is circa 2007 and 8, we had 1 million followers on Facebook when you couldn't buy followers. Like, you actually go get them.
Yeah.
So when I went to go sell the business, it's kind of funny. I got a call from our biggest distributor. The time was Source Interlink Media. And they go, I'm in this room. No idea why they called me. I thought they were going to like can me from the distribution. So I'm like petrified. 21, 22 years old, walk in this room, and there's the COO, the CEO, and like 5 executives around this table. And the CFO walks in and slams like all of his brands on the table and goes, how do you outsell us in the store 3-1, 2-1? And I was like, well, we built the brand, and we have a really, really endeared customer base that loves what we do. And that's really kind of where I've used that mentality in building brands of all my companies, right? Even the bars and restaurants, I have patrons who had our logos tattooed on their arms. Right? I mean, like, it was, I think, truthfully, I'll show you some pictures, but it's funny because I jokingly say, I think I've contributed to more marriages, divorces, and babies in my career as a restaurant bar operator. We've had a funeral or 2 at the bars, right? So you build this brand and you kind of really endear yourself to your customer base, and then we try to use that same mentality in building AirPros. It's not just anybody can choose any HVAC contractor. I mean, heck, there's tens of thousands of them in the U.S. and in each state. And how do you differentiate yourself? And it kind of goes to how we wrapped our first truck. And Dan will kill me, Antonelli from Kickcharge, because to this day, I'm probably one of the only, I think, brands he never actually rebranded. And he's done 9 of my other brands as we acquire companies. But AirPros, our first truck, was wrapped like a zebra and a tiger, and it was nothing to do with air conditioning, and it's horrible look, but what it did is it set ourselves apart. And when customers saw it, they're like, oh my God, what's this crazy tiger truck, and what is AirPros? And so that's kind of how we grew the business organically for the first couple of years, and started doing some strategic M&A and buying customer lists of defunct businesses or guys who are struggling, And, today I proudly sit here and I think we are the largest non-equity sponsored HVAC platform. So we never actually raised equity. We've always raised debt capital, which is
Yeah.
super unique in our industry. So our shareholders and our organization control the whole entire business, which, most platforms of our size, they've had multiple exits, and, the founders typically only retain a small portion. And in our business, we control the majority. So it's been a very, very interesting ride, a very unique way to go about building a company, and we're very proud of it.
I mean, I don't know. So when we put videos out of this podcast, you only see your face. So unfortunately, the folks watching on YouTube did not get to see me do the first ever Toolbox in the Trades walk away, because you literally made my jaw drop. I cannot believe that at such a young age, you created a brand that people tattooed on their skin permanently. I have tattoos. I like tattoos. I don't have a brand tattoo. So
Yep, yep.
that is something. Love Dan Antonelli too, by the way. But man, we could go so deep on this, but I really want to talk for a moment about debt capital, because
Yep.
you and your family are still, I think, 78% shareholders of the business. So can you tell me a bit about something like that, right? I think that's
Yeah,
what you
in
said
the
at the beginning.
'70s, yeah, in the '70s, I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah.
So tell me a bit about how this debt capital works, because we've talked so much about private equity and M&A on this podcast, and this is something I haven't heard about before. So I know some of our listeners haven't either. So tell me a bit about it.
Yeah, listen, I mean, the traditional path, and a lot of these operators, and it's a great path to take, so don't take anything away from you guys for what you've done, is to go and build your business and spend, years doing it, and eventually finding a partner who's going to either, one, buy you to start their own platform, so a private equity group, or two, a strategic where they're going to fold you into their platform and you're going to roll, and so on and so forth. And we like that idea. We had a very healthy pipeline of potential targets we wanted to acquire. And so, I went out to seek an alternative means to doing so, right, and building real value for our shareholders, because those that did roll with us obviously have intrinsic value because they're rolling into a platform that hasn't traded hands yet. So we actually met with a group out of Austin, Texas, and we had a couple of bidders and suitors, and we raised what's called a delayed draw term loan. So really what we did is we raised capital to do M&A. And so it's not cheap, don't by any means, it's not cheap capital. But it gave us the creative freedom and flexibility to take our business. At the time we first raised the money, was 45 million in revenue, to over 200 million today. And even today, we refinanced the capital a few times through one of the largest debt providers in the U.S. But even today, we still don't have any equity in our cap stack as we're recording this call right now. So, it's really been an interesting ride. And listen, all the guys out there who are in their 20, 30, $40 million range, that exists for them as well. And happy to, talk more about that and how to source that, how to find that, and be a resource to help other operators who want to do that, because it's a path that a lot of people don't know about. Right? We're all in this industry as contractors. Think, okay, build my company. Either I keep it, give it to my kids, which, by the way, I'm not really for that. My kids, I can assure you, don't want my company, they want my money, right? So it's when I pass away, right? They have no desire to run an HVAC company. They definitely want, the money, right? So, but the other part of that is how do you keep scaling, right? How do you grow inorganically? How do you do M&A and not give up, the majority of your company? And there's ways to do that. And we've done it. We're a perfect example of that, and actually achieving that. And so, I don't think anybody, even our capital partners, would ever have imagined at the rate at which we grew, because of our ability to define accretive deals and great operators out there who we felt were a good fit for our organization. But it's been a really, really fun ride, and it's been a really interesting process, and I've learned a ton in doing it.
I promise you, you're going to get contact requests once this podcast launched to ask about how this works. I don't want to
Yeah.
get into the nitty gritty of it, but I'm so happy you brought it to the table, because it's important. One thing we do talk about when we talk about private equity partnerships is it's so important to evaluate what your options are. And it just sounds like this is another option for folks in the 20, 30 million, $40 million range to consider if they want to grow through acquisition, but don't want to partner with private equity in order to do it.
Yeah, 100%.
So you've grown into a ton of markets. You're based out of Florida. And where again in Florida are you? Remind me, please.
So we're headquartered right here in Fort Lauderdale, actually a suburb of that called Plantation is where our headquarter office is. We operate in 8 different states now. So Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, Colorado, and Washington. And we're looking
Washington
to expand.
State or DC?
Washington State. No, DC State. Yeah.
Okay.
Way across
Right.
the other side of the country.
Dang. Okay. So as you grew into these new markets across
Yep.
the entire country, I mean, Pacific Northwest from Southeast Florida, right? From the
South. Yep.
Southeast.
Yep.
Yeah. Directions, huh? What are those? What were some of the biggest obstacles to growth as you expanded into these markets?
I think the biggest thing is really just how do you manage communication? A lot of the platforms out there, and no discredit to them, they've built great businesses. One of the things that we do differently is we're real integrators, and how we manage our company is we actually integrate the businesses. Right, we're not aggregators. So in the general sense, there's two types of platforms out there. You have integrators and aggregators. Aggregators are private equity guys who just go out and acquire EBITDA and revenue and consolidate it and eventually repackage it and go and sell it, and that's the whole process. We wanted to operate the same playing field, right? So same sales processes, right down to the same job types, same KPIs, same back office accounting software. I mean, all those things for us have a huge impact on how we operate. The other thing for me was kind of some real self-awakening moments as the business grew from 40 to 100 to 140 million in revenue. Was making sure you have the right team members around you, the right organizational infrastructure to support that. I think the first thing you should do before you scale any business, or even if you're in your current business, is really make sure you have a good org chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you know who reports to who. Communication lines are very clean. That's the best way to get things accomplished. And then for me, it was really building out an executive leadership team that's done this before, right? So surround yourself with people who either have more knowledge than you or equal knowledge to you to help you grow. And I think we've done a very good job of that in our organization. So, I stepped down as CEO of the business March of last year and brought in, full C-suite, right? So Rob DiPietro, our CEO, fantastic operator. Brian Smith, our COO, fantastic operator. Richard Ottram, our CFO, fantastic operator. And they brought their own skill sets to the organization that then matures the business even further. So I know it's kind of a long-winded answer to the question you asked, but
you're hitting themes that we hit a lot on this show, which is org charts. I've had Al Levy on the show a dozen times, not dozen, that's a euphemism, but a couple times, and he talks so much about the importance of org charts, not only to knowing who reports to who, but also to give career pathways to folks who want to grow within the business. So I think that's so important. And I think it's pretty incredible that you stepped down as CEO and now you're CGO, Chief Growth Officer.
Arbitrary title. No, know what it really means, but it sounded pretty cool when they gave it to me, so I kind of took it. So Chief Growth Officer.
Yeah, I would love to know what your prime objective is as Chief Growth Officer. And I'm assuming this probably goes into what you're doing with Inspected and Permit Hub.
Kind of, sort of. It's kind of a little separated. For me, with as a Chief Growth Officer, my number one role is to keep growing through both inorganically and organically. So making sure that we have the right tools for our team to organically grow the businesses, but also to continue to find great partners who want to partner with us and other targets for M&A that we can get done and can help us grow inorganically. The Inspected business and Permit Hub really came out of a necessity that we had in our organization going back, I don't know, 2021, 2020-ish, where, we're installing at the time, we're roughly $40 million in revenue and we're doing, let's call it 30, 40, 50 systems, whatever the number is across the day, across the organization. And if you know anything about permitting, it's a really mundane process, but a lot of municipalities require it, right? So we go to a customer's house, we install a system today, and then we got to go back there 3 or 4 days later and wait for Bob or John or Sally, the mechanical inspector, to come out and say, okay, well, it looks good. Well, listen, we all know, right? They're worse than the cable company most times. No offense to any municipality listening in here, but they give you a window.
We do have a big municipality audience, so get ready for some pushback, Anthony. I've got government contractor. I got government people listening to this show like you have no idea. You were saying some hot takes.
I know. I'm going to get my permits. I'll start failing all of a sudden, right?
But, no. Okay, yeah. Okay, so yes, as you're growing, as you're expanding, you're installing 30 to 50 units a day, and you have this really annoying problem where you're going in, doing the work, and then you have to come in and go back to the homeowner's house and wait for this mythical permit inspector who may or may not show up.
100%. And listen, they're government employees. No, again, no offense to them, but they don't have a certain schedule they have to adhere to, so they're going to come at their time. And I was saying they're kind of worse than the cable company. I mean, how many times you call the cable company out and they give you a window from 9 to 12 and I show up at 6 p.m. at night. Well, the homeowner's sitting there waiting all day. I like to have one of our team on site when they do the inspections, because if there's something wrong, having to wait and reschedule for later, right? We're there instantly in the mix, can fix it. Okay, sign off, we're done. It's a very antiquated process, very, very arduous, and it's ready for change. So, we built technology. It's patent pending. Hopefully, patent gets issued soon. But we geolocate a video conferencing call in real time to a specific location. And so, what Inspected sought out to do was sell this technology to municipalities, right? But if you ever talk to a government agency and selling to a government agency, it's like pulling teeth, right? It takes forever. It's RFPs. I mean, it's very, very long tail project. So then we realized that 47 states allow for what's called a third party inspector. So big home builders, Lennar, Pulte, whatever these guys are, they're not waiting for Bob, Sally, John to show up to their 100-track home site to inspect a duck rough, right? They have an engineering firm on site, and as they're going along through the process, they're signing it off. I said, oh, great. What if we can manage or marry this technology with this kind of law that exists in almost every state in the country? That's how Inspected was born. So now in Florida, Georgia, and Texas, for Inspected in real time, when install crews are done, we do roofing, solar, all the trades, even new home construction. But when install crews are done with the job, right, they call our remote inspectors virtually and get inspected and pass the permit in real time. And so there's no more waiting, which is super cool, right? Because it solves that problem. The second piece to that is, in doing that, we realize there's a whole bunch of automation involved with managing a permit. Right. So it's all the different forms you need for different municipality. It's the, in this muni, you got to have this document signed for this change out, whatever it may be. And so we essentially built this, we call it a document engine, or now it's called Permit Hub, which is going to be launching here any week. It's in beta right now and doing all that fun stuff. But integrates directly with ServiceTitan. So when you sell a job, right, and the job creates a required permit, it pulls that data in, automatically fills out all the required forms for that municipality, so that your permit team in your office have it all in one spot. And like every other contractor who manages a permit, I can assure you most of us are managing it on a Google spreadsheet or Excel file where Miss Smith was installed on, December 1st, 2023, whatever it is, and you're having to manually check up on where that process is. With Permit Hub, now it's a one-stop shop that can manage your entire permitting workflow from start to finish, and that would be a resource or a database to find out where in the process they exist. So, not a plug for Permit Hub or Inspected, but definitely, I think it's a cool solution that we, as a contractor, have developed outside of AirPros. So you don't know about any kind of commingling of anything, but different leadership team. But it definitely solves for a problem that we all face. How do we manage our permits? How do we get our inspections and jobs done and closed out faster? And how do we track where customers are in a life cycle of a permit?
Yeah. So going back to what I said 25 minutes ago, you are someone who finds a problem and you solve it, which I think is a really phenomenal quality to have, not just as a entrepreneur, but as a person, as a contractor. So I'm complimenting you. Here you go. I'll take my compliment. There you go.
Appreciate the compliment. Thank you very much for it.
So just to kind of reiterate here, so for Florida, Georgia, and Texas, inspected.com allows a technician to, when they're done with their tool, when they're done with their installation, they can go to inspected.com, get a virtual inspector, and in real time, that inspector could look at everything and say, yep, it's good to go. So now we've just eliminated a homeowner having to stay home another day waiting for a fictional inspector, and having your tech get sent out too to make sure everything's okay, which is what you at AirPros prefer to do. And then Permit Hub enables you to track all the permits. You said, installing 30, 50 systems a day from start to finish. So it takes away that Google Sheet component.
And it also automates the documentation requirements. Because if let's just say you're a contractor, and like for us in Broward County, right? In one county, there's 13 different municipalities, and every municipality has their own requirement of what documents you have to have or forms required for that change out, right? And so we've taken all those forms, we've literally painstakingly, very, very diligently automated every single one of those things, so that in real time you can have that done. And then the other cool feature we didn't talk about for Permit Hub, and we can get off it and go talk about other fun contractor stuff, is we actually do real-time notary. So when a job's sold in real time, the other problem we have as a contractor is getting the homeowner to notarize those documents, right? So not to pull a permit. So within a matter of 3 minutes of submitting a It's an average, so don't hold me to that number, but between 3 and 6 minutes, right, that's the average time we have from the sale process for a tech in a home, submitting job sold or signed estimate or estimate approval, whatever your structure is inside of ServiceTitan. We can actually email the homeowner or text, whatever you prefer, the actual link to click and sign all those permit docs. We talked about that all automated and in real time. So you're getting a real-time notary, real-time permit application, everything done in real time. And that's kind of what we built, as to your point, as a necessity, because now we have 8 different states we're operating in, right? We're doing 10, 15,000 jobs a month across the country. I mean, it's a big number, right? So a lot of movement, a lot of moving parts. We're trying to simplify and solve that for contractors.
Okay. This is so freaking cool, Anthony. And I want you to know, like, I've had several folks on the show at this point now who, like ServiceTitan, are innovating new technology to make the space more efficient, to make the space more friendly to the contractor, to the business owner. And I just think it's so cool that you're doing this. I think it's really, really fantastic.
I appreciate that. And, again, the good thing about it is that we're also contractors, right? So we come from the industry. We know the pains. We all face them. And ServiceTitan has been I mean, funny enough, I want to tell you a quick story about ServiceTitan and my relationship with ServiceTitan, right? Because it's super comical. So ServiceTitan is a godsend. I mean, there's no other way. It's a gold standard in operating when it comes to HVAC companies, home service companies. When I first started Air Pros, remember circa 2017, 18, you guys are finally getting your stride. Like you're actually getting it going and really expanding.
That's when they hired me, by the way. That's when they hired me. They're like, we got Jackie. We can go. This is all that matters.
You definitely drove the growth, Jackie. I promise.
Thank you. And just saying.
And so I call up the rep at the time, and I'm like, hey, I'd like to use ServiceTitan. And we had 2 technicians and 2 trucks. Well, kind of like a tech and a half, right? And they were like, yeah, you're way too small. I said, listen, guys, just take a shot on me. I promise you we're going to get this thing. We're going to grow it. And I painstakingly convinced them to give us a shot. And that was 2000. I think we became a client in 18. And, we now have, I don't know how many instances of the product and operating different states across the universe of the country. But, it's been an invaluable resource. But I always tell that joke when I talk to the team at ServiceTitan. You guys almost didn't have me as a client,
I know. And then the egg would have been on our face. And I have to let all the listeners know, for those who don't know, I started my career at ServiceTitan as the social media manager. And if Anthony maybe posted a passive aggressive comment on a Facebook ad, or maybe put up a Google review that wasn't so nice, I was the one who responded. And now here we are in 2023, just
That's
living
amazing.
our best lives. We're going to get back to inspected.com and Permit Hub in a second, because I want to close out and I want to let folks know how they can get involved with this. And I want to talk about the integration in ServiceTitan. Yep. But real quick, I'm just going to go through your resume. Magazine creator, bar and restaurant, restaurateur 2 times over, HVAC entrepreneur, $250 million. Now doing inspected.com and Permit Hub, you're essentially a startup entrepreneur. You're a technology entrepreneur. And I want to know, do you experience any imposter syndrome? And if so, how do you overcome it?
As I'm the imposter, as from a startup perspective,
do you know what imposter syndrome is?
I have no clue what that is.
Oh my gosh, I'll tell you, and I'll let the rest of the team know. So imposter syndrome is something where you're in a role and you're good at your job, but for whatever reason, you have some internal voices in your head that tell you, I'm not good enough. What am I doing here? I'm a fraud. People are going to find out that I don't know what I'm doing. And when I was thinking about your background, Anthony, I was like, I wonder if this guy has this issue. I have this issue. I know a lot of people do. You may not, and that's okay. So I think the crux of my question really is how do you do it?
I think we started off with my creative juices come when I build something, right? And I have a passion for building companies. I don't think I ever have an imposter syndrome. Listen, we're all humans. So we all have this internal dialogue with ourselves. Am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right decision? Did I start my career as an actual technician? No, I didn't. I started as a business guy who had his dad in the trades, who saw his dad work and sell. My dad's never owned an HVAC company. He's always been a tech or sales guy. It's definitely a rude awakening, though, going back from running a company with 1,000 employees and full C-suite and VP levels and directors and GMs and regionals. They're having to be in a startup environment. It's completely different because now you're doing the work. And I think that's what most entrepreneurs, enjoy, is actually that phase of the business where you actually are doing the work. And we all preach, right? Work on the business, not in the business, but a lot of that fun when you first build a company is working in the business, right? I mean, I can't tell how many times as an Air Pros, where I get a phone call at 10 o'clock at night and I drop off a fan motor to a technician who was running a service call because they were all out of stock on their truck, right? Like, so, don't I guess one piece of advice you give other entrepreneurs is don't be afraid to work into the business until you can work on the business, right? Like, everybody's always trying to push to work on it, and they lose sight of what actually is making the business tick, and that's real important. But I don't think I have imposter syndrome. I think I have, like we all do, an internal dialogue with, am I doing the right thing? Do I have the right team? Is this decision I made the right decision? Am I making the right decision on a daily basis? But yeah, I think that's probably the correct way to address that.
Wow. So you're a mentally healthy person. What's it like, Anthony?
I read a lot of books. Take a page out of Tommy Mello, right? Like read, learn. I'm actually reading a book right now so I can read more effectively. How to read 200 pages in 1 hour. So it's a pretty interesting book. Yeah.
That's amazing. Very, very cool, Anthony. I love that dude, you talk so quick. You've given like so many insights. I want to keep you longer, but I think this episode is like jam-packed with great content already. Tell the folks listening how they can learn more about inspected.com and Permit Hub.
For sure. It's pretty easy. You can go to www.inspected.com.
Oh, I was thinking like send a carrier pigeon. I don't know what's up with me today. Like I'm really punchy today. This is good. I'm glad. I'm happy about it. Okay, sorry. Go to inspected.com.
Yeah, and you can learn there and sign up. There's a little box. You learn more about us, and one of our amazing talented team members will reach out to you. Same with Permit Hub. You can go to inspected.com and actually get to Permit Hub if you wanted to, or permithub.com as well. To reach out, and we'll love to show you a demo and get you on and get you signed up. It's not officially launched yet, so it's coming out hopefully soon, and we're doing some pre-early sign-up stuff to be a first adopter, all that fun jazz.
Cool. So this is probably going to come out at the end of August, beginning of September. So where do you think you guys will be when this interview
comes
out?
You can sign up. By then you can sign up for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. And just to clarify, are they two separate companies, or is Permit Hub kind of underneath the inspected.com umbrella?
Yeah. So Inspected is the parent company, because you can use Permit Hub and then have our inspectors do the inspections, or just use Inspected as standalone. But Inspected is the main business. And then Permit Hub is our technology that actually powers Inspected. So the technology that we use internally to manage all of our contractors on Inspected is actually what Permit Hub truly is.
Got it. And can you tell us a bit about how you're talking with the ServiceTitan folks about potential integration?
Yes, right now it's pretty simple. It's kind of a one-way integration. So when you create a job tag or a tag on a job that permit required, and we can pull it in and create the product, create the job inside of Permit Hub based on those details. I think eventually it becomes a smoother as we continue to grow and build a product out, it becomes a lot easier. But I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, every couple of hours we ping and get our API key to push over the information, and then we do it that way.
Awesome. Very, very cool. So excited that we're aiming from begging ServiceTitan to let you pay us to now integrating your own software into our software. I think is a super cool transition if you haven't thought of it that way, or not transformation of evolution.
Yep.
I have to ask, because I know you're a reader, right? What book made the biggest impact on you professionally? And you don't have to pick just one, you can pick multiple, but I would love to know what are some titles that really made you think and made you go like, wow.
I think there's a book that one of our VPs brought into me about 2 years ago now, and we've kind of used it pretty regularly in our business. Traction by Gino Wickman, great book.
Mm-hmm.
Really helps on kind of organizational communication structure, meeting cadence. With kind of my takeaways, especially as a leader who's evolving in a business, it's definitely helpful. Obviously Good to Great's a great book. Talks about, life cycles of companies, what makes good companies great, and so on and so forth. One I'm reading right now is The Innovator's Dilemma, which is kind of about how businesses shift and change, and it's really interesting read, and I would highly recommend that. But I like reading, kind of the autobiography business stories. So the story on the shoe dog or whatever the title of that book was, and I'm reading the one right now. Actually, just finished it on Trader Joe and his path and his journey. And so kind of it's fun to learn what these guys went through, and the stuff they had to overcome as operators and entrepreneurs.
Very, very cool. Anthony Perera, thank you so much for sharing your story on Toolbox for the Trades. I am so excited for the official launch of inspected.com and Permit Hub. I can't wait to hear more. And hopefully you and I can partner again in the future on some content to tell more folks about these really cool tools you created.
I would love it, and I really enjoy the time being on the show with you. And thank you again for having me.